Alright, let's jump into this. Like we're chatting over coffee about the wild world of childbirth, old school versus new school. Picture yourself as a woman in the Middle Ages, about to pop out a kid in some dimly lit hut with a bunch of midwives around you, muttering prayers to keep the bad vibes away. No epidurals, no fancy hospital gear, not even a clean towel, just you a floor covered in straw and a whole lot of guts. Now zip to today, you're in a shiny delivery room hooked up to all sorts of beeping machines with doctors ready to make this as smooth as possible. It's like comparing a medieval night brawl to a Formula 1 race one's messy wild and full of curveballs, the other's high-tech controlled, but still kinda nuts. So grab a seat because we're diving into how women survived labor back then, without a drop of anesthesia, and how modern medicines flipped the script. It's gonna be a crazy ride through history with some giggles and real talk thrown in. Let's set the scene. Childbirth in the Middle Ages wasn't just a big moment, it was like rolling the dice with your life. Imagine living in a time when hitting 35 was a long shot, and that's if you dodged the plague starvation or some random knight's sword. For women, giving birth was straight up one of the riskiest things you could do. Historians say 10-20% of moms didn't make it through each birth. Yep, every labor was a legit gamble. And the baby about a third didn't make it past their first birthday. Now compare that to today, where in places with good healthcare, the mom's odds of not making it are less than 0 or 2%. Makes you realize how wild the gap is. But before we high-five ourselves, let's check out what those medieval moms were dealing with. Back then, childbirth was a whole village vibe run by midwives who were like part doctor, part spiritual guru, part hype squad. These ladies were the real MVPs, rocking herbal know-how, hands-on skills, and some serious nerve. No med school, no ultrasound machines, just wisdom handed down from grandma to grandma. They'd whip up brews with stuff like mugwort or fennel to take the edge off labor pains. But let's be real, it was more like a hope this helps vibe than actual pain relief. If things got dicey, they'd pull out the big guns like putting a saint's relic on your belly or chanting to St. Margaret the childbirth saint. Sounds a bit out there, huh? But when you're pushing a kid out with 0 painkillers, you'll try anything to stack the odds. Now don't get it twisted, this wasn't some cozy rustic scene. The Middle Ages were rough, cleanliness, basically a myth. Think dirty hands, grimy tools, and birthing beds that were just piles of straw. Infections were a huge killer, often hitting days after delivery with something we now call puerperal fever. And if the baby was coming out wrong or labor just wouldn't budge, yikes, midwives might try to flip the baby by hand, talk about nerves of steel, or worst case they'd call in a barber surgeon. Yep, the same dude who cut your hair or yanked your teeth might be your Hail Mary. They'd sometimes do a crude C-section, but with no anesthesia or clean tools, it was game over for the mom just to maybe save the baby for a quick baptism. Brutal, right? Now think about today's OB-GYNs. They've got sterile ORs, epidurals, and monitors that track every little heartbeat. If something goes wrong, they're ready with an emergency C-section that's got survival rates medieval midwives would have thought were witchcraft. So why was childbirth such a nightmare back then? It wasn't just missing fancy tech. Medieval women were up against a rough combo. Malnutrition was everywhere, so moms and babies were already starting weak. Most women were grinding right up to labor, hauling water, working fields, or scrubbing floors. No such thing as maternity leave, plus the church was out here saying labor pain was God's punishment for Eve's screw-ups, so you were supposed to just suck it up. Whining? Not really a thing. Now compare that to us with our prenatal vitamins, birthing classes, and apps to time contractions. But here's the real talk, even with all our gadgets, childbirth's still no joke. Epidurals help, sure, but they don't wipe out the stress, the unknowns, or the fact that you're basically running a physical marathon to bring a new human into the world. Let's take a sec and pretend you're that medieval mom-to-be. You're in a chilly, drafty room, maybe with a fire. If you're lucky, your midwife's yelling at you to push while waving some lavender to chill the spirits. Your husband's probably outside praying or knocking back a drink, cause dudes weren't usually allowed in too much lady stuff. Now picture a modern delivery room. You've got your chill playlist, a doula cheering you on, and a doc who can check your baby's vitals without blinking. It's almost funny how different the energy is. But here's something to think about. Have we just swapped one set of problems for another? Sure, we've got slick hospitals, but now we're dealing with crazy pressure for a perfect birth, social media flexing, and a healthcare system that's not always there for everyone. Are we really that much better off? Or are we just wrestling with a different kind of chaos? As we keep going, going, we're gonna dig into what made medieval childbirth such a wild ride, and how midwives kept it together with just herbs and prayers. We'll also check out how today's OB-GYNs have changed the game, but with their own weird quirks and hurdles. And don't worry, we'll toss in some laughs, cause if our ancestors could get through labor without epidurals, we can at least crack a smile at how far we've come. So hang tight as we get into the messy details of medieval midwifery and figure out what it tells us about the past, the present, and maybe even where we're headed with this whole childbirth thing. Alright friends, let's keep this wild ride going. We've already set the scene, medieval moms facing childbirth like it's a boss battle with no save points, while today's moms have high-tech hospitals and epidurals on speed dial. But let's zoom in closer, get into the gritty details of what it was like to give birth back in the Middle Ages, and see how those badass midwives kept things rolling with nothing but herbs, prayers, and sheer willpower. We're also gonna peek at how modern OB-GYNs do their thing, and why even with all our fancy tech, childbirth still has its own set of curveballs. Oh, and we'll toss in some laughs to keep it light, because if those medieval ladies could push through labor without painkillers, we can at least chuckle at the chaos. So let's dive into the medieval birthing scene. Picture yourself in, say, 14th century England. You're in labor, sweating it out in a cramped, smoky hut. The midwife's there, probably someone's grandma who's seen it all, and she's barking orders like a drill sergeant while stirring a pot of weird-smelling herbs. These midwives were the backbone of childbirth back then, and they had to work with what they had, which wasn't much. No stethoscopes, no IV drips, just a mental encyclopedia of tricks passed down through the years. They'd use stuff like willow bark for pain, kind of like nature's aspirin, but way less effective, or smear on oils made from chamomile to soothe you. Spoiler alert, it didn't soothe much. If the labor was dragging on, they might try physical moves like pressing on your belly to nudge the baby along, or even walking you around the room to get things moving. Sounds exhausting, right? That's because but it wasn't just about herbs and elbow grease. Midwives had to navigate some serious challenges. For one, they were dealing with moms who were often malnourished or straight up exhausted from a life of hard labor, think carrying buckets of water or grinding grain all day. Weak moms meant weaker babies, and that made everything riskier. Then there was the whole sanitation disaster. Nobody knew about germs back then, thank you pre-pasture world, so midwives might be delivering babies with hands that had just been kneading bread or tending livestock. Infections like puerperal fever were a silent assassin creeping in after delivery and wiping out moms who'd survived the birth itself, and if the baby was stuck in a bad position, midwives would try to turn it manually, which was as scary as it sounds. Sometimes they'd succeed, but other times it was a losing battle. Compare that to today, where an OB-GYN can spot a breech baby with an ultrasound and plan a C-section faster than you can say, "Epidural, please." Let's talk about the stakes. Medieval childbirth wasn't just physically brutal, it was a mental marathon. Women were expected to endure insane pain because, well, the church said it was their lot in life, thanks Eve. Some midwives leaned hard into the spiritual side, using rituals to keep everyone calm. They might tie a birthing girdle around your waist, basically a fancy belt with prayers written on it, or chant to saints for protection. It wasn't just superstition, it was a way to give moms something to cling to when the pain was unbearable. Fast forward to now, and we've got doulas hyping you up with breathing exercises and doctors offering pain relief options that actually work. But here's the thing, even today, the mental game of childbirth is real. You're still facing fear, uncertainty, and the pressure to do it right, whether that's a natural birth or a scheduled C-section. Different tools, same emotional roller coaster. Now let's flip to the modern side. Today's OB-GYNs are like the Avengers of childbirth, armed with tech training and teams of specialists. They've got tools like fetal monitors to track the baby's heart rate, epidurals to dial down the pain, and antibiotics to knock out infections before they start. If things go sideways, they can roll you into surgery for a C-section with a 95% plus success rate in most developed countries. It's a far cry from the barber surgeon hacking away with a dirty knife. But let's not kid ourselves, modern childbirth isn't perfect. Access to care is a huge issue. Not everyone can afford a top-tier hospital or even basic prenatal checkups. And then there's the over-medicalization debate. Some folks argue we've swung too far, turning childbirth into a clinical checklist with too many interventions. Ever heard someone complain about being pressured into a C-section they didn't want? Yeah, that's a thing. So while we've got tech that medieval midwives could only dream of, we've also got new problems they'd probably laugh at. Here's a fun comparison to lighten the mood. Imagine a medieval midwife time traveling to a modern delivery room. She'd probably lose it over the sterile gloves and beeping machines like, what is this sorcery? Meanwhile, we'd be horrified watching her boil herbs in a pot that was definitely not dishwasher safe. But here's the kicker, both eras have their hacks. Back then it was a sprig of lavender and a prayer. Today it's a spinal block and a birthing ball. And yet both midwives and OB-GYNs are chasing the same goal, getting mom and baby through safely. It's wild to think about how much has changed, but also how much hasn't. Childbirth is still this raw, messy, miraculous thing, whether you're in a hut or a hospital. Let's talk survival strategies. Medieval midwives were masters of improvisation. They'd use whatever was on hand, herbs, oils, even weird stuff like animal fat to keep things moving. If labor stalled, they might try fumigation, which was basically burning herbs under the mom to encourage the baby out. Sounds like a medieval TikTok hack gone wrong, right? But it was their version of problem solving. Today, OB-GYNs have protocols backed by science oxytocin drips to speed up labor forceps for tricky deliveries, you name it. But mistakes happen in both worlds. Back then, a midwife might misjudge a baby's position and lose both mom and child. Today, a doctor might misread a monitor or push an intervention too soon. The tools have changed, but the high stakes still there. So what's the long-term impact of all this? Those medieval struggles shaped how we view childbirth today. The sheer grit of those women and their midwives laid the groundwork for medical advancements. Every time a midwife figured out a new herb or technique, it was a tiny step toward modern obstetrics. And now we're building on that with research tech and a push for better maternal care worldwide. But we're not done. Gaps in healthcare access like rural hospitals closing or moms in low-income areas getting subpar care echo the inequities of the past. It's like we've upgraded the game but haven't fixed all the glitches. Here's something to chew on if you were dropped into a medieval birthing hut. How would you handle it? No pain, meds, no monitors, just you and a midwife with a questionable herbal brew. Could you hack it? Or if you're picturing yourself in a modern delivery room, do you think all the tech makes it easier, or does it just come with its own baggage? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We're curious. As we keep rolling, we'll dig into how these two worlds collide and what they teach us about resilience, progress, and maybe even what's next for childbirth. Stick with us because this story's about to get even wilder. Alright pals, we're back for round 3 of our childbirth time travel adventure. We've laughed, we've cringed, and we've seen how medieval moms and their midwives tackled labor with nothing but herbs, prayers, and some serious grit. We've also peeked at how today's OB-GYNs roll with their high-tech gear and sterile delivery rooms. Now let's wrap up the big picture recap, the wild ride, reflect on what it all means, and pull some lessons from the past that might just make us rethink how we handle childbirth today. Plus, we'll keep the vibe light with a few chuckles, because if our ancestors could survive labor without anesthesia, we can at least have a laugh while we unpack this. Ready? Let's do it, so let's hit the highlights. Back in the Middle Ages, childbirth was like signing up for a gladiator match with no armor. Moms faced sky-high risks, 10-20% didn't make it through, and a third of babies didn't see their first birthday. Midwives were the MVPs, juggling herbal brews, spiritual rituals, and some sketchy manual maneuvers to get babies out. No clean tools, no painkillers, just raw courage and a whole lot of hoping for the best. Infections, malnutrition, and a culture that said, suck it up, it's God's will, made it a brutal game. Fast forward to now, and we've got OB-GYNs with fancy tech, ultrasounds, epidurals, C-sections, with survival rates that would have blown medieval minds. But it's not all smooth sailing. Modern moms deal with new pressures like chasing the perfect birth or fighting for access to decent care. It's a different world, but the core challenge bringing a new human into it is still a wild ride. Now let's connect the dots between then and now. Those medieval moms and midwives weren't just surviving, they were laying the groundwork for everything we've got today. Every herb they tested, every trick they passed down was a step toward modern medicine. Think about it, without their trial and error, we might not have the science that lets OB-GYN save lives with a quick incision or a dose of antibiotics. But here's the flip side, modern childbirth has its own drama. We've traded dirty straw beds for sterile hospitals, but now we're wrestling with overbooked doctors, crazy healthcare costs, and social media making everyone feel like their birth has to be Instagram worthy. It's like we've swapped one set of battles for another, and it makes you wonder, are we really that much better off, or are we just fighting the same fight with shinier weapons? Here's a question to chew on. What would a medieval midwife think if she saw us freaking out over a Wi-Fi outage in the delivery room? She'd probably roll her eyes and say, "You're stressed about that? Try delivering a baby with a wolf howling outside." But seriously, it's wild to think about how our ancestors powered through with so little while we're out here with apps to track contractions, but still stressing about every little thing. Maybe we're not as tough as we think, or maybe we're tough in a different way, juggling mental overload in a world that expects us to have it all together. Either way, comparing then and now shows how far we've come, but also how some things like the raw intensity of childbirth never really change. So what can we learn from those medieval moms and their midwives? For one, resilience is everything. Those women faced insane odds and still kept the human race going. They didn't have Google or pain meds, but they had grit, community, and a knack for making do. Midwives leaned on each other, sharing knowledge and holding space for moms in a way that's not so different from today's doulas or support groups. That teamwork vibe. It's a lesson we could use now, especially when you hear about moms in some places struggling to get basic care. Another big takeaway is adaptability. Medieval midwives improvise with what they had, herbs, prayers, whatever, and modern medicine keeps pushing forward with new tech and research. It's all about rolling with the punches, whether you're dodging infections in a hut or navigating insurance paperwork in a hospital. Let's bring it to the present. Those lessons from the past hit hard when you look at today's maternal health challenges. Sure, we've got hospitals that look like sci-fi sets, but not everyone can walk through those doors. In some parts of the world, or even in rural spots in developed countries, moms are still facing risks that echo the Middle Ages, like no access to doctors or emergency care. And don't get me started on the mental load social media's got us comparing our births to some influencer's perfect delivery while medieval moms were just trying not to die. The past teaches us that survival takes community and resourcefulness, and we could use a bit of that to push for better healthcare access for every mom everywhere. Imagine if we took that medieval, we're all in this together energy, and used it to fix gaps in maternal care today. Pretty powerful, right? Here's a fun thought picture yourself trying to explain a fetal monitor to a medieval midwife. You'd be like, "Yeah, it beeps to tell us the baby's okay," and she'd probably think it's some kind of magic box. Or imagine her trying to sell you on a birthing girdle with prayers scribbled on it. You'd be like, I'll stick with my epidural, thanks. It's hilarious how different the tools are, but at the end of the day, both eras are about getting mom and baby through the chaos. So what do you think? Could you handle a medieval birth with just a midwife and some herbs? Or are you all about that modern hospital life? Drop your take in the comments. We want to hear it. As we head toward the big finish, we're gonna tie all this together and figure out what this crazy history lesson means for us now. We'll look at how far we've come, where we're still dropping the ball, and how we can keep pushing for a world where every mom gets the care she deserves. Plus, we'll keep the laughs coming, because if history's taught us anything, it's that a little humor goes a long way when you're dealing with something as intense as childbirth. Hang tight for the final stretch, where we'll wrap this up and maybe even inspire you to think a bit differently about the miracle of bringing new life into the world. Alright friends, we've reached the final lap of our childbirth time travel saga. We've laughed, we've winced, and we've marveled at how medieval moms and their midwives powered through labor with just herbs, prayers, and a whole lot of nerve. We've also seen how today's OB-GYNs bring their A-game with high-tech tools and sterile delivery rooms. Now let's tie this all together. Recap the wild journey, reflect on what it means for us today, and maybe even spark a little inspiration to make the world a better place for moms everywhere. Plus, we'll keep the chuckles coming because if our ancestors could handle childbirth without epidurals, we can at least wrap this up with a smile. So grab a snack and let's finish strong. Let's do a quick rewind. Way back in the Middle Ages, childbirth was like stepping into a high-stakes survival game. Moms face brutal odds. 10–20% didn't survive labor, and a third of babies didn't make it to their first birthday. Midwives were the rock stars wielding herbal brews, spiritual rituals, and some seriously gutsy moves to get babies out in a world with zero sanitation and no painkillers. It was messy, risky, and honestly a miracle anyone made it through. Fast forward to today, and we've got OB-GYNs with ultrasounds, epidurals, and C-sections that save lives like it's no big deal. But it's not all sunshine. Modern moms deal with new challenges like healthcare access gaps, social media pressure, and the stress of chasing a perfect birth. From straw-covered huts to sterile hospitals, it's been a wild glow-up, but the core mission, bringing new humans into the world, is still as raw and real as ever. Now let's get reflective. Those medieval moms and midwives weren't just surviving, they were building the foundation for everything we've got now. Every herb they tried, every prayer they whispered was a tiny push toward the medical breakthroughs we take for granted today. It makes you wonder, what are we doing now that'll shape childbirth for the next generation? Are we really as advanced as we think, or are we just swapping old problems for shiny new ones? Think about it, medieval moms didn't have to deal with Instagram shaming their birth plan, but they also didn't have antibiotics. We've got tech that would have looked like magic back then, but we're still wrestling with big issues like making sure every mom, no matter where she lives, gets the care she needs. It's like we're running a marathon our ancestors started, and we've got to keep pushing forward. What's the big lesson here? It's all about resilience and community. Those medieval midwives didn't have fancy degrees, but they had each other sharing tricks and holding space for moms in the scariest moments. That we're in this together vibe is something we could lean into today. Right now, too many moms, especially in underserved areas, face risks that feel way too close to the Middle Ages, like no access to hospitals or prenatal care. If we took a page from our ancestors and focused on teamwork, we could push for better maternal health care everywhere. Imagine if we channeled that medieval grit into advocating for policies that make sure every mom gets a fair shot. Pretty epic, right? And let's not forget adaptability. Midwives made do with what they had, and modern medicine keeps evolving with new research and tech. That hustle to keep improving. It's what keeps us moving forward. Here's a thought to chew on. If you could bring one thing from modern childbirth back to the Middle Ages, what would it be? An epidural to ease the pain, a fetal monitor to check on the baby, or maybe just a clean towel. And if a medieval midwife could see our world, what do you think she'd say about our obsession with natural births or posting labor selfies online? It's kind of hilarious to imagine her shaking her head like you've got magic pain medicine and you're stressing about that. Drop your thoughts in the comments. We're dying to know what you'd pick. It's fun to think about, but it also reminds us how childbirth, no matter the era, is this universal, messy, miraculous thing that connects us all. So where do we go from here? The past shows us that humans are tough as nails, and we've come a long way from birthing in huts to delivering in hospitals, but there's still work to do. Supporting maternal health isn't just about more tech, it's about making sure every mom, whether she's in a big city or a rural village, has access to care that keeps her and her baby safe. It's about learning from those medieval midwives who held it together with nothing but heart and hustle, and using that to push for a world where no mom has to face childbirth alone or afraid. Let's keep that conversation going, because if history's taught us anything, it's that we're stronger when we work together, okay? Time for the fun part. If you loved this deep dive into the wild world of childbirth, hit that like button and share this video with your friends. It's a great way to spark some epic chats. Got a hot take on medieval midwives versus modern OB-GYNs? Drop it in the comments. We're reading every single one and can't wait to see what you think. And if you want to keep exploring crazy history stories, check out our video on the weirdest medical practices in history next. It's packed with stuff that'll make you laugh and cringe. Oh, and don't forget to smash that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a video. Thanks for hanging out with us on this insane journey through time. We're so glad you're here. Have an awesome day, and we'll catch you in the next one.